Hello, welcome. Can everybody hear me? Please put on your headphones if you don't already have them. And if you're tuned into a different channel, tune into the orange channel. Everybody give me a big thumbs up once you've got it. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here early in the morning and contention with the keynote. We really appreciate it. And we're excited to share FINRA's story with you. My name's Leah Crawford. I'm a Principal Customer Solutions Manager with AWS. In case anyone here isn't familiar with the Customer Solutions Manager role, CSMs support our customers throughout the delivery and implementation of cloud solutions. And for the past 3 years, I've had the pleasure of supporting FINRA throughout their cloud reinvention. With me today, I have some of FINRA's most tenured and experienced cloud executives. Kim Weiland is FINRA's Senior Vice President of Enterprise Operations. She's been with FINRA for over 20 years, and she's been at the forefront of FINRA's cloud journey. She's set up their cloud operating model, she's pioneered cloud best practices, and most importantly, she's continuously pushed AWS to invent and simplify on behalf of mature cloud customers. Next, we have Daniel Koo, who is another equally amazing cloud pioneer. Daniel is FINRA's Vice President of Enterprise Productivity Engineering and has been helping FINRA reinvent their technology organization with generative AI. Daniel has been instrumental in FINRA's cloud journey and their generative AI journey, establishing their DevOps platforms and reinventing the way developers develop with generative AI. Give Daniel and Kim a round of applause for being here today. Today's session, we have an incredible story about FINRA's generative AI journey. And with any cloud journey, some portion of today's sessions will be technical, but what I'm most excited about are the critically important non-technical portions of today's story. The portions about the immensely critical best practices around people, process, and organizational changes that are required to be successful with disruptive technology. And just to level set, there are plenty of sessions across re:Invent this week that will show you how to develop and configure a generative AI solution hands-on. So that's not the focus of today's session. But what today's session will focus on is how to operationalize generative AI solutions across a massive regulated enterprise with a critical mission to protect our US investors. So let's clip in. For today's agenda, Kim is going to come on stage and she's going to tell us first a little bit more about who FINRA is and give you a little bit of background into their cloud journey. Then she'll tell us more about FINRA's vision for generative AI, some of the principles they set out with to be successful with generative AI, and the challenges that they faced when getting started. She'll then dive into the first pilots that they've since launched into production. After that, Daniel's going to take the stage and give you a tell-all experience about how he built and developed FINRA's developer assistant with Amazon Q. Then Kim's going to come back and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what's next for FINRA in generative AI. But before we do that, I do just want to make sure we're all on the same page about generative AI. This is a 300-level session, so we won't be going into generative AI fundamentals. Can I get a show of hands? How many people here would rate their level of experience with generative AI as intermediate? Okay, a couple of folks, for sure. Well, again, this is a 300-level session, so we won't be going into the fundamentals, but I do want to make sure we're on the same page about the services that we'll be discussing for today's session. Who here has seen this slide? Any show of hands? Okay, only a couple of you. Great. So I will give you a little bit of insight into Amazon's approach to generative AI. Here at AWS, we are inventing across all layers of the generative AI stack to help our customers build and deploy generative AI solutions. For our customers that would like to customize, train, develop, and host their own custom foundation models, we have our infrastructure layer of generative AI solutions, where we provide you the latest and greatest GPUs and also Amazon's custom AI purpose-built Trainium and Inferentia chips. Next, for our customers who may prefer to avoid some of the undifferentiated heavy lifting that comes with managing compute, but still want to take advantage of the industry's latest foundation models, we have Amazon Bedrock. Amazon Bedrock provides API access to the industry's leading foundation models and provides some native capabilities to make it easy to build generative AI solutions. Last, for our customers who are buyers and not builders and would prefer to configure a generative AI solution as opposed to develop one, we have our Amazon Q family of services. Now, in all reality, most customers are going to use a mixture of these services, depending on their specific use cases and requirements. In fact, FINRA Story has experimented with all layers of the generative AI stack. But what we'll focus on today is Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q Developer. Amazon Bedrock provides native features that made it easier for FINRA to build and deploy generative AI applications. Features like guardrails, which prohibit inappropriate use, and knowledge bases, which provide secure connections to data sources to make RAG architectures easier, allowed them to move fast. Additionally, Amazon Q Developer integrated seamlessly into their development environment and provided enhanced security features to allow them to innovate quickly. But their story's not without challenges. It takes a lot of conviction, persistence, and a tailored operationalization approach to deploy these solutions across an enterprise. And with that, I'll invite Kim to the stage to tell you all about it. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, and good morning. So first of all, I'll go a little bit into who is FINRA. May not be a breakfast table name for everybody in the room, for some it might. We are the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. What does that mean? We are working in conjunction with the SEC to make sure that we have investor protection and market integrity. And we ensure that the financial markets are equitable and safe for everyone in our country. We do this through detection with data. We have discipline for fines, and we make rules to ensure that we can deter negative interactions. On the data side, how do we do this? We are a big data organization. We have over 600 petabytes of data on disk today. Actually, we probably have over an exabyte by this month. And we use that data in many, many ways. And we started this journey about 10 years ago in the cloud. And now we are a cloud-first organization, which means all of this data is used today for our modeling, our analytics, and other data organizations to get insight from that data. But like every journey, you have to start somewhere. For us, it was with our advanced analytics program. About 3 years ago, we started that program. We came up with a model governance program, an MDLC, and we now have over 50 models running in production today that work on this data. However, that's just a journey. And with AI, all of this changes. FINRA's vision for generative AI is that it is transformative in our way of working with this data, and it expands the possibilities of what's achievable. And transformative is a really big word here, right? We're talking from typewriters to computers, from video that used to be on hard media, VHS, beta, CDs, to now streaming services. Every piece of how people work with that changes. And so does the culture and the way that you have to approach that change within your organization. So we have some guiding principles that we use in order to achieve this transformation of that technology. The first one is to do that, is to be transformative. Like I said, we started about 3 years ago with our MDLC and our model governance. AIs are models, they're large language models, but it is not MDLC 2.0. It is very, very different on how governance and LLM technology and AI should be looked at. Mitigate risks. The risks are very different. This is not just technical risk. This is business risk. This is the risk of the end users understanding what they can ask and what they can look for. We want to ensure that we use it ethically. We want to build purposefully. What does that mean? Everybody will have ideas on what they can do with AI. Everybody has great ideas, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is fit for purpose for the business use case so that you get the outcome you really, really need. And lastly, You need to include multiple stakeholders. This is not just technology change. This is a transformative journey on how you can get insights better from your data. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges of getting started. First of all, groundswell of interest. You cannot look at social media, you cannot walk down the grocery store without seeing a usage of AI. So everybody wants to use it. Every business user, every administrative user, every developer, they all want to get their hands on it. However, the risks are different, right? This is not just a risk of somebody asking the wrong question. They may not understand the parameters of which those answers will be returned. LLMs are not good at math. People are used to calculators, right? This is a different kind of answer that they're getting back. There are new legal risks and technical risks. This has been a big area of focus for us in terms of the cooperation we have needed with our legal teams on terms and conditions, ethical use of models, how the indemnifications work within those policies, and how frequently they change without a legacy contract amendment being done. And the legal organizations, this is new. This has not been done before. And it is a brand new technical domain. And I'll get into a little bit further. We'll actually get into some details on what training we have found is needed, not just in the technology space, but also in that end user space. So how did we get started? Building similarly, like we did with our advanced analytics movement, we created what was called our Generative AI Coalition. So we got leadership in a room, and leadership from the business, leadership from our legal departments, leadership even from technology, and leadership from other areas. And we created this AI coalition. We wanted to make sure that we had the right prioritization of what we were trying to accomplish with the AI technology. And we had to create that prioritization framework. Like I said, everybody wants to use it, everybody's got great ideas. But you need to start somewhere where everybody is comfortable, but that you can show the value and you can show the ethical and safe use of AI to make everybody comfortable. Change is hard, change is scary. You need to be able to navigate through that with a very definitive plan. We leveraged any opportunities we could to expose people to this new technology. So at FINRA, we have a really cool thing. We have a create-a-thon. It is an internal hackathon where the business and technology can get together and use new innovative technologies and try them out to propose solutions. And that sort of gamification of the use of this technology was very, very successful in getting a better understanding throughout the organization of what that was. We worked not only with our own legal team, but we worked with the legal team at AWS and other third parties to try to help simplify that landscape. What were the key risk areas that legal was concerned with across the board? And it's not just services, it's third-party products, it's COTS packages you may use. Everybody wants to add AI, and they may or may not tell you when they do it. But there are risks to doing that. We built an operational proxy on top of some of these services. So kind of like a kitchen sink valve, we could start to moderate what was being used, how often, by who. And we implemented guardrails to ensure that they were ethical and acceptable use. The other thing we had to do was really increase the observability and come to agreement within our own organizations of what value we were trying to measure and the context of what that was. And it was critical to ensuring that we were getting what we needed, we had the right business people involved, and the right focus on how we are going to move this forward. We learned very, very quickly that we were going to need training and we were going to need upskilling programs. And how did we do that? The most important piece of training that we found we needed, not only in technology, but also on the business side, was with prompt engineering. The differences prompt can make with an LLM is not only satisfaction back to your user base, it's not only the accuracy of whether or not they get what they want. Prompts can equal money. This can also be whether or not your ROI for how you're trying to implement AI will come up beneficial. The last thing you want to do is put this new technology in front of customers, have them use it, and then get this great big bill, and then have folks go, oh, it's too costly, we can't use it. So that prompt engineering piece has been crucial to ensuring that it has been successful and measurable throughout this journey. And the last thing we did is we had to revise our model governance, processing, and tooling. And again, this is not just MDLC 2.0. It is no longer the models, the training, the inferences, and that you need to govern, but the use cases. What are those third-party models and services that you want folks to use? Are there differences in those use cases for which baseline models that you want them to use that for? So that analysis of the fit for purpose has to be different, but it has to be at scale and it has to be rapid for the amount of use cases that everyone is going to come forward with. So where did we start? Very specifically, we introduced Philip. Philip is our FINRA large language interactive portal. This is our chatbot that we started out with a pilot, and it is based on Amazon Bedrock. We put a couple of additional valves and proxies on top, but we started to roll this out to business users with training, with some acknowledgments of what they were getting themselves into, about those risks that they needed to make sure they understood, but we want them to be exposed to how this can be transformative. And secondly, we rolled out FINRA's Developer Assistant, and this is based on Amazon Q. And for details about this specifically, I'm going to invite Daniel up to the stage.
All right. Thank you, Kim, for walking us through with the Gen AI journey at FINRA. And thank you, Leah, for a great introduction. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here today to share about how we have enabled Developer Assistant at FINRA. For those that are really thinking about starting this journey and enabling this service, I'm sure this talk will be very helpful and valuable as we walk through the lessons learned as well as the path that we took in enabling this at FINRA. So let's get right into it. So, one way to look at this with respect to enabling the service is we can roll it out for every engineers to use the service, right? We can do that right away, but that's not what we did, right? We wanted to make sure we have the right strategy in place, right plan in place, as well as a measured approach for rolling this out. So the very first thing that we did was to come up with goals, right? We had 3 high-level goals that we wanted to target. And the first one is to look at how we can integrate large language models into our software development lifecycle. And not only just integrate this into our SDLC, but how can we do this while minimizing risks? There are privacy concerns, there are data concerns, and security requirements that we must meet to minimize all the potential risks. So that was our number 1 goal. The second goal that we targeted was, can this help overcome our common software development challenges? We have a lot of demands for doing a lot of work, but we have limited capacity. So can this actually help our engineers to become more productive and increase their efficiency? So that was our goal number 2. The third goal was to see that whether this can help us foster a culture of continuous improvement and innovation. We did not want this to become an overhead to our engineers. We want to make sure that this will help our engineers, again, to be more productive and help them to learn more things, new things, and innovative ways of doing software development. So with these 3 goals in mind, we started our journey. So what we decided to do was we ran a 5-month R&D effort. Right? At FINRA, we have an R&D program where we look at emerging technologies and emerging concepts to determine whether this can help us to build better regulatory systems. And code assistance was definitely one of those concepts and emerging technologies that we wanted to look at. So we took a 5-month total duration of performing an R&D effort. So the very first thing we did was we performed an industry research. We want to learn about how the industry is using Gen AI and LLM and the code assistance capability, and what it means to us. What's the relevance at FINRA? We looked at many different use cases out there within the software development lifecycle. We also looked at many of the tools that are out there, right? We had 17 different tools that we looked at during our industry research, and we established an evaluation framework, which I'm going to walk through a little later. It's a comprehensive evaluation framework that we leverage to experiment all of our use cases across these tools. So we defined 3 top use cases for FINRA, and then we conducted experiments to identify which tools are the best for these use cases. And based on these experiments, we shortlisted to 5 tools that we conducted a full hands-on evaluation. Again, using the evaluation framework that we established, we were able to do a hands-on evaluation for these tools. And finally, we're able to make a recommendation for 3 of those tools. And out of that, Amazon Q for Developer was our top choice. So as I mentioned, we established the evaluation framework to evaluate all of the top tools and services out there. I'm not going to go through in details of each of these items, but as you can see, we came up with a comprehensive evaluation framework. At a high level, we have 6 different categories. We wanted to look at the functionality of the service, right? From a code generation aspect, code explanation aspect. We wanted to look at the different functionalities that it can offer. We also want to look at the supporting technologies. You know, we have IDEs that we use. Does it support these IDEs? Does it support the languages that we use to develop our software? And the third thing is security and compliance. As I mentioned in our goals, it was important for us to look at how we can integrate this into our development lifecycle, but thinking about privacy and data and security requirements. Right? As an example, we want to make sure that none of the FINRA data gets shared, right, while we use it as a service. Other one is around enterprise integration. This has to work within our ecosystem. It has to have all the different integration that are needed for us to operate, from authentication, authorization, logs, monitoring. So we want to make sure that it checks off all of these boxes. The next thing is around quality, the accuracy, and the performance. And I think this is the most critical piece, right? We want to look at how it performs when we use a service in doing our software development. And lastly, maintenance, right? What's the total effort to maintain this capability? What's the total cost in running this capability? So as I mentioned, Amazon Q was our top choice. And now I want to go into some of the details of why Amazon Q was selected. So what you see here are the different phases of software development lifecycle. So we have the planning phase, the creation phase, the testing phase, the operation aspect, and then the maintenance and modernization. So as you can see here also, we have different personas that are involved in this software development lifecycle. We have the engineers, the DevOps engineers, architects, and so forth. So we consider all of this, and we determined top 3 areas that we wanted to focus on, which was the creation, testing, and then the modernization. And when we did this by looking at all the different languages that we currently use at FINRA and the popular languages that we wanted to evaluate against. One thing to highlight here, when we kind of look at all of these different use cases, we realize that Q for Developer is a productivity assistant tool. It is not meant to replace developers. We still need humans. We still need them to review and make sure that everything is still working to our desire. So again, why did we choose Amazon Q compared to other tools that are out there? It met all of our functionality, code quality, security, and data requirements, and it performed really well across all of these different requirements that we had. First thing, from a functionality standpoint, Amazon Q supports multiple modalities. It has multiple interfaces where users can use a service. And this was really beneficial to our engineers because we saw that they were using these different modalities for different use cases, from chat to inline to agent. Next thing, again, Amazon Q supported a lot of our top use cases. I just want to cite some of them. From application code generation, code explanation, test case generation, as well as running security scans on the fly. It performed really well against these top use cases that we had. The next big use case that we had was code transformation, right? Performing the upgrades. And this is critical because we wanted to see how Amazon Q can help us reduce that cycle time. And it performed really well when we did the Java version upgrades and Spring Boot version upgrades. And I continue to emphasize this. It met our security and compliance requirements. Q does not store any of the FINRA code or PII data, and it does not use FINRA data for model training. This was absolutely critical, and Q was able to meet these requirements. And lastly, since Q is trained on AWS services and interfaces, and majority of FINRA systems are running in AWS, when we ask for questions, when we provide our prompts, a lot of the questions revolve around AWS services. So it was able to make great recommendations for us in terms of our design and our coding. So with all of this, meeting all of our requirements, we were able to proceed further. And at this point, were we able to enable this across for all the engineers? Not quite. What we decided to do was to run a pilot. And we ran a 2-month pilot to see how this will actually impact our teams on a day-to-day basis. So we chose 14 different teams across the enterprise, comprising of 60 different engineers. And again, we ran this for 9 weeks within our controlled development environment. We chose 4 use cases within this pilot, from code transformation to test code generation, project onboarding, as well as code documentation. So each of the teams chose the use cases that were most relevant to them, and they ran the pilot for 2 months. All right, given this is the tech talk, I do have to have an architecture diagram. So this is the architecture diagram that I want to walk through. Well, I do want to walk through a little bit on how Amazon Q works underneath. So you can see from the top left, we have the users, we have the developers, we have the architects, and so forth. And what they do is they use Amazon Q on their IDE. This is very important. This is very important because we want to make sure they can use a service where they are spending most of their time, which is their IDEs. So we chose the top 2 IDEs that we use at FINRA, which is IntelliJ and Visual Studio. So the very first thing that happens, if you see the top right, the very first thing that happens is actually it performs an authorization. The service is not enabled for every engineer. So what we go through is we go through an authorization, and once you're authorized, now you can use a service. And what it does is using the Amazon Q plugin within the IDE, it interacts directly with Amazon Q service in the background using the different modalities that we have. I mentioned about the chat modality, the inline chat. By the way, this provided fantastic performance for us using the Anthropic Claude 3.5 model. So definitely this is worth checking out. So different modalities will interact with the Amazon Q service in the background. And Amazon Q uses Bedrock underneath with all the different models that it has. The other thing is on the bottom right, you can see that Amazon Q supports customization capability. So it uses RAG to basically retrieve our own code base that is residing within our environment to make even better recommendations. This is something that we're piloting right now, which we hope to roll it out early next year. The last thing, on the bottom left, you can see the different security controls that we were able to integrate. From authorization to logging, monitoring, encryption, as well as opting out of data sharing, all of these security controls we were able to integrate within this process. All right, so let's get back to the pilot now. How do we measure the success of our pilot? So we looked at 3 different categories, from impact to usage to sentiment. So from an impact standpoint, when we started the pilot, we actually asked each of the team to define their own success measurements. And we saw teams creating these the measurements, and one of the team wanted to target a higher test code coverage. Another team wanted to see how this can improve their velocity with respect to their delivery. And from a usage standpoint, we captured metrics from the center to understand the active use of the service, what were the acceptance rate, how many code blocks were accepted. So we were monitoring from the center the trend as the pilot was progressing. The last piece, this is very important as well. From a sentiment standpoint, we wanted to understand the experience from our developers, right? There's one thing to get good value out of the service, but we want to make sure that developers have a good experience and they're satisfied in using this service, and also understand whether this is really increasing their productivity. So with every pilot, we hope that everything goes smooth, but we did run into some challenges. And these were the top challenges that we ran into. And as Kim pointed out, prompt engineering was the prominent challenge that we ran into. As we rolled this out to our pilot users, we recognized that some of them were new to prompt engineering. They were asking a question and they would get a response back. They would ask the same question, they would get a different response back. So, there was some confusion around how do we make the best prompts. So what we did was we partnered with AWS. We actually came up with a training workshop, and we conducted this with all the pilot participants. And we started to build out a prompt catalog with reference examples for all the top use cases that we had. And this tremendously helped people to get up to speed. Similarly, lack of best practices. Again, this is relatively new technology, and we were also trying to figure out what are the best practices, right? With all the different functionalities, the modalities that it offers, we wanted to figure out what's the best way to approach different use cases. So we hosted another workshop. Again, partnered with AWS, we came up with the best practices to train our engineers, and we started to develop user guides and documentation with reference examples. The last challenge was around security monitoring. I know I continue to emphasize this, but security requirements was absolutely critical. And one of the things that we needed to have in order for us to proceed was to have the ability to monitor prompts and the guardrail logs. So again, we partnered with AWS, and they were able to deliver a feature where we can export all of our logs into a dedicated S3 bucket, and we can continue to monitor. Okay, so what was the result of the pilot? We actually saw improvement at every angle. We saw improvements with our developers, increasing their productivity, increasing their creativity. And this in turn helped the entire team to build a better software, increasing their quality and decreasing their technical debt. And of course, with improvement in teams, we saw an improvement in the entire organization. It was moving towards being more innovative and being more agile. So with that, we're able to recommend a rollout to production. I want to share some numbers here. As it was mentioned in the keynote yesterday as well, we saw a tremendous impact through this service. We saw a 30% increase in terms of code quality and code integrity. We saw a 40% reduction in code transformation activity, and we saw a 20% reduction in the cognitive load, as this was helping the teams to get up to speed with the code explanation and so forth. Some amazing numbers that we see here. From a usage perspective, when we look at the acceptance rate, industry standard that we see here is 30%. But what we realized was the chat modality, we're actually able to achieve a 70% acceptance rate for all the recommendations that were made. Close to 30% for inline code acceptance. More than 4,500 code blocks were accepted that were recommended by Amazon Q. We consistently had active users throughout the pilot. And you can see the number of Java upgrades that we were able to perform just within 2 months. As I mentioned, sentiment was very important. When we did a survey with our engineers participating in the pilot, every team have recommended Amazon Q. You can see more than 80% of the engineers stated that this helped them to focus and be in the flow. And more than 15% of productivity increases to complete their tasks. And this was another interesting number that we saw is more than 50% of the engineers actually said that it significantly changed the way they work, of course, in a positive way. So after a successful R&D and a successful pilot, we were ready to roll this out to production. But we decided to do this in phases. You can kind of see a trend here, right, at FINRA. We take an iterative approach in rolling out these capabilities. So we decided to break this into 2 different phases. First phase was to enable this across 15% of our engineers. And then the second phase, which will be coming early next year, is to roll this out across the rest of the organization. The reason for this is because we have to do a lot of groundwork to establish many things to make this successful. From having the right architecture in place for production use, from user access controls, having all the right metrics so that we can capture them and we can monitor them, and having the ability to monitor and as I talked about the logging aspect for prompts and guardrails. So we have to have all of these in place before we roll it out to the enterprise. And from a prerequisite standpoint, we actually came up with a Gen AI usage terms. And we actually had all the developers acknowledge this before enabling this service. And every engineer that were participating in phase 1, they had to go through the workshop and training. As we learn from the pilot, there's going to be new engineers using the service, and they're going to be new to prompt engineering. So we want to make sure that we go through a proper workshop and training. The other thing was to make sure that we have a decent amount of documentation and guidelines for our engineers, right? How can they get started? How do they onboard? What are the different best practices? And also making the prompt catalog available for the engineers to use. The other thing was we established a community of practice where the engineers can actually come together and they can discuss amongst themselves some of the tips, some of the tricks, as well as the success stories. So they can learn from each other. So this was another important one that we established as we rolled out the service. And lastly, working closely with AWS as they deliver new features, how can we safely make this available for our engineers? So I want to end with sharing our progress with our phase 1. As I mentioned, we onboarded 15% of our tech organization in phase 1. We hosted a 4-day onboarding workshop, as you can see on the right side. And we hosted weekly office hours and monthly knowledge sharing sessions as we progress through our phase 1. And here are our numbers. We continue to see an increase in our code quality and code integrity. We continue to see a reduction in our code transformation. And we continue to see a reduction in the cognitive load to our development teams. And from a usage perspective, 50% chat code acceptance rate, 80% inline code acceptance rate, again, some fantastic numbers that we see here, 12,000 accepted code blocks. We continue to see active use of the service across 10 different languages that we use to develop our software. So we are seeing our developers increase their productivity, teams getting better, the overall software quality getting better, and our organization getting better from driving our innovation and improving on agility. We're really excited about our phase 2 and what it can do to our development community. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Kim. She's going to go over what's next for FINRA.
All right, so what's next? As Daniel mentioned, there is a lot of metrics that have been integrated into these pilots and these production rollouts. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to streamline the way that we are rolling this out. We want to be able to increase the speed of adoption, and we want to be able to have broader usage of these technologies. So what's next is we're going to go ahead and use those observability metrics, and we're going to analyze them, and we're probably going to use AI on them as well. We want to understand what's working and what isn't working, and we're going to need to be very agile in how we adopt those. We are going to look at those guardrails that we need, and we're going to need to figure out a way to layer guardrails. Different use cases may need different guardrails. We may have enterprise-wide guardrails, and we may have individual usage guardrails for very specific use cases. And we need to figure out and monitor when are those guardrails being hit appropriately and why? Is it education? Is it a misunderstanding? And when are those guardrails being triggered when they really shouldn't be? And is it because we have malformed guardrails, or is it because we need to look at how we are using those AI instrumentation or those models? And lastly, we're going to hopefully mature where we're going. Most of the technology in use today in AI in production is very assistive. They're productivity assistants. We would like to get to the point where we can use agentic technologies with AI and not only help people make better decisions, but also help them complete the processes that they need to complete on a business level faster. So with that, I would thank you very much, and I'm going to hand it back to Leah to close us out.
Well, what a session. Again, thank you so much. I think I just want to wrap up with a couple of key takeaways from my perspective. One, when it comes to operationalizing generative AI, establish frameworks that help you move fast. Generative AI and setting up the operations, the governance, the security, the legal frameworks can be a little daunting, but create safe spaces to experiment and get that hands-on experience quick, because the learning curve is there and you're going to have to invest in some of the people, process, and organizational changes that are required to be successful. Second, take advantage of some of Amazon's native capabilities to help you move faster. That's what we saw FINRA do with Amazon Bedrock and especially with Amazon Q. The native security features, the integrations with the development environment, it helped them move faster and it helped get their security, operations, and governance team on board. Lastly, partner with AWS. We are here to help you be successful, and doing things like workshops and training exercises will get your user community on board fast. So that's all I have to say. I do want to say, Please take a moment to complete the survey in the app. We'd greatly appreciate it. And with about 15 minutes left, since this is a silent session, we are going to just stand to the side. And if you have any questions, feel free to come up and quietly ask us questions. We'll be there for you. So thank you again. Have a great reInvent.